Well,
I'm about
welcome
to go
to
full.
another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with a special guest. The reason why I say special is because he's very excited, I guess. I'm here with Kyle.
That's right. Very special Kyle.
Kyle, your name is, so you go by Kyle or Kyle Dean Houston?
I go by Kyle, but every handle that I've got out there is Kyle Dean Houston, and there's a really good reason for
You
that.
sell drugs.
Most people that call me Kyle Dean are mad at me.
Why?
So that's what my mom always called me. When she goes first and middle name, you're in trouble.
Oh,
So
dude, I get that with my first and last name. If somebody says like Robert instead of Robbie, I immediately back of my neck, my hairs stand up on the back of my neck. I'm like, whoa, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong. The house is on fire. Something. It's anybody that does that to me. It's why I always go by Robbie.
good to know, Robert. It's good to know. Just kidding. Just kidding.
This is how you get on my bad side. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But
I just want to see a house on fire.
Kyle, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, man, if you want, what you do professionally?
What I do professionally, okay, well, I am a newly published author, to be published, but I'm also a coach and a speaker. By trade, I'm a sales executive, and we'll kind of get into that, I'm sure, as we tell the story, but I created everything that pays the bills through being a sales executive.
You got to figure out that the way to be a salesman is be a good way of talking with people. It seems like, you can talk about being a con man, or, you can talk about selling people that way. But I feel like it's really about trying to read a person and kind of read the way of the room, like someone gives off a certain type of vibe. If you see someone with like maybe a religious vibe to them, you're not going to sell them devil worship books. You're going to sell them something completely different. You want to figure out what's best suited for the person. So how exactly do you do that?
How exactly do I do that? Well, let me just tell you, a good salesman is going to be able to sell religious people the devil worshiping stuff. So, just kidding. What I do is I typically find a common ground, and it's really not about tricking people or fooling them or lying. I know that there's a lot, like when some people say, "Hey, I'm a sales guy," immediately in their mind they go towards a used car salesman or something like that. But the profession of sales to me is very sacred and very needed. And I will be as bold to say that it's what makes the world go round. The unfortunate thing is there's not very many people that are good at it. It's a small fraction of the people out there, but it's really about finding a connection. It's really about having a value proposition that fixes a problem or makes somebody's life easier. And the sooner you can get involved with the person's real needs, and the sooner you can understand how what you're bringing enhances their life, what's in it for them, the better you're going to be at sales. So that's really what it's about.
I feel like everybody is a salesperson because the way we've gone as a society is we're constantly selling ourselves to people. Like we're trying to sell them a false narrative. We're trying to sell themselves of who we think we are. It's like, just, if you be yourself, I'm pretty sure people are going to like you or they're not. That's the best sales pitch you can ever offer. I feel like being more real and genuine. I mean, half the time it seems like life's all about bills and it's all about payments. How do you know? What are you typically trying to show? You said you're a speaker. So if you're speaking in sales, are you talking about more of the marketing aspect of thing or more of the motivational aspect?
Sure. When I talk about sales, I am literally talking about selling. I'm talking about all of the mindset issues that get in the way of selling, all the stigma that's been put on it in people's minds, the negative self-talk that gets in the way of people getting out there and actually helping other people. Because life to me, you made a comment, and I'm sure that we can dissect it and figure out a way to maybe change our minds. But life to me is not all about bills. Life to me is not all about the issues that we have and the things that we're trying to overcome. Life to me is about connection. And if it wasn't about connection, then why in the heck are we all different? And why in the heck are we all here? Right? So it really is about connection, and you're not going to connect with people at your deepest level until you are presenting yourself, to your point. And I think what's beautiful about today's marketing landscape and today's sales landscape is that it is about showing vulnerability, and it is about showing people that you are human and connecting on that level. as opposed to having these people in an ivory tower telling you how white your teeth should be and what cigarette you should smoke and all those other things that it was about in the 70s and the 60s. Now it's truly about connection. And people do get it wrong. To your point, people are going on social media and creating these false narratives and saying that they're this and they're really not. And it drives me bananas
It's the
for
same
sure.
thing when we were messaging back and forth, and I'm looking at your profile. I couldn't tell if this was an actual authentic thing or not, because the whole factor is, how many times do someone come up with a fake profile or come up with a profile that's selling something like tips to get you the best in the business, tips to get you here, tips to get you here, and then it's like, it's going to cost this much money. I get messages all the time of people trying to say how they can promote my podcast to a bigger platform with a certain payment, or I'm missing on this advertising aspect. I'm really freaking good at advertising when I want to do it for somebody else. I am terrible at it for myself because I'll let it go wherever it goes. But like with people with hot sauce, people that are starting their own businesses, one of the major benefits, I'm pretty sure you've probably picked up as well during a pandemic or during this whole situation, is how much free time people got to realize what they truly wanted. And this is where a lot of people became self-entrepreneurs. Such people that are trying to market their hot sauces, it's easy. You're going to send it to people that taste hot sauce for a living, or put an Instagram page about it. Everything right now, when it comes to marketing, it all happens to be done through social media. The reason why is it's got the biggest grasp on anything in the world. Even my grandma's on a freaking tablet now. And it was like, before that was taboo. You would never see that. But it's the fact of this thing has a grasp on all of us. And I think some of the smart things a lot of people started doing was putting out advertisements during this lockdown situation, because what else are you doing? You're sitting at home on your phone. The thing is, when you're a hot sauce company, when you're a coffee company, when you're any of these small corporations or self-owned businesses, you're not really going to be able to get out there and make a breakthrough and change anybody's perspective on the fact that who the hell is already dominating the market. When I say coffee, you think Starbucks. When I say coffee, you think Folgers. When I say fast food, you think McDonald's. There's already businesses that started out in the beginning way before you, and they're owning the market because they bought up all the property in it.
Well, I think you said a mouthful there, and you said a bunch of stuff.
I had to breathe a couple of times.
It's okay, man. The thing that I would say about all of that stuff is that it reeks of how do you differentiate yourself in a vast sea of hot sauces. I don't know why we chose hot sauce, but I'm a huge fan. In a vast sea of hot sauces and barbecue sauces and all of these things that are relatively commoditized, how do you differentiate yourself and get the eyeballs that are on these screens to like yours more? And that becomes the complexity. But that's the difference between marketing and sales. What I teach, what I talk about, what I have created a successful career in doing is direct marketing, typically early stage technology, and getting out there and leaping the chasm between early adopters that think it's a really neat technology to the mass, right? And that's a complex thing. And it's not about tablets, and it's not about cell phones, and it's not about getting a 15-second moment with somebody and saying, hey, this is going to change your life. It's literally about getting out there and preaching the gospel of whatever technology you're trying to sell. But let me do you a huge favor, because you looked at my profile for just 1 second, and you and I are actually getting to know each other right now. My backstory is so much more interesting than just another sales guy that's out there talking about sales. Because
Yeah, you put ex-con in the thing. I saw that. Yeah.
I'm a junkie, ex-convict. Now we start to get into the meat of things.
Well, that's like, I mean, it's interesting, but it's also, I've talked to motivational speakers that people do this, could put a gun in his mouth, someone that used to do, and it's the whole 9 yards. But the thing is, what makes you Kyle? What makes you different from the others is kind of what I want to get to, the meat and potatoes, I would say, the part that you want to talk about, the side that separates you from all the other person that's spouting a book on how to get rich quick or how to do something. It's like, I got to hear it in the conversation. You write a book, I probably won't read it, but I want to hear you talk about it. You know what I mean?
You're going to read this one, Robbie. You're going to read this one, buddy. So let me just change your life for a second. First of all, what makes me me is not the sales stuff. We started talking about sales, and I can talk about that till we're blue in the face. What makes me me is the fact that I don't have a profile that's selling anything. I have a profile that's trying to give people hope. I have a brand image right now that is trying to give people something to point at and say, look, it doesn't matter how far you've fallen. It doesn't matter how bad things look. It can get better. And here's proof. Here's a guy that has, I don't know if we cuss on this program or not, but
I
here's a
think
guy.
I've done it like 3 times.
Have you? What about the F word?
Yeah, you can
Here's a
say that.
guy, here's a guy that's fucked his life up severely to the point to where he didn't think he was ever going to make it out. Or he didn't think he was going to make it out of prison. And he gets out and not only survives, but thrives. And that's what my life stands for. And that's what I'm about. But the makeup of all of that, the foundation and the building blocks is all of those tragedies and all of those things. I apologize. I never put a gun in my mouth and I don't have that story, but I will almost guarantee I can differentiate myself from other motivational speakers.
First
Go ahead.
off,
Yes.
this is a family show. How dare you curse on my show? No, so tell me about it. So what exactly, when you say you go to prison and you said you're an ex-junkie, I've had friends actually recently that have passed away from opioid addiction. It's a terrible thing. I think it's a big problem with what's going on in the world. When I talk about life being payments or life being bills, a lot of this information that you talk about offering, it's not always free, of course, but I feel like it's always got to be at the charge of card first. But what would make someone come to you for help based on your story? What exactly is your story?
Sure. Um, so two things I want to say about that. First of all, second of all, I want to answer that. First of all, I want to say that the way things are set up right now, help starts with people not feeling alone, right? It starts there. And that's really what my presence on social media is all about. I want people to understand they're not alone. They're not the only ones. Secondly, um, let me just give you a 5 minute snapshot of my story. Okay, raised in a small town, was the football player, did really well in school. Things seemed to come easy to me. Went through a series of quitting things in my early 20s, and by the time I was in my mid 20s, I had a business with 8 employees. I was an up and coming entrepreneur, and got addicted to methamphetamine. And this was the mid 90s when it was all the rage, right? In a short period of time, I spiraled into something that I didn't understand. I didn't understand weakness. I didn't understand humility. I didn't understand how people, essentially, for lack of better words, become a loser that is completely out of control. And I was getting a crash course. I started to use needles. I started to manufacture meth because I wanted to make sure I never ran out. And I got so depressed and so trapped that I thought my only exit strategy was going to be to either have an overdose or commit suicide. And I'm giving you the abbreviated version of all this, but because I learned how to make the drug really, really well, people started to create this machine that just made me a bigger cook and a bigger cook. And eventually, instead of dying, the universe had a better plan, and I get arrested and I'm facing 30 years with no parole. And I end up in a cell by myself for 23 hours of every day for somewhere around a year of my life and have an incredible transformation. And it's no small thing, and I hope we come back to it, but I want to get to this story. And so ends up, I spend 18 months of my life thinking I'm going to be insignificant. I'm going to do the rest of my life in prison. I've got children. I'm never going to get to see them again. All of these things that you go through. And about a month before I get sentenced, my case goes weak. They had no business pulling over the car. I could have beat the case. And instead, I took a 9-year sentence because I felt culpable. I felt insecure that I was going to be able to beat the case. And I go off to do my time in the best mindset that I've ever had in my life. This is where the story starts to twist. About a month before I get paroled out. So on a 9-year sentence in Missouri, your first time down, you're going to do 3 years. That's just because it was so crowded. I'd already done 18 months that counted. So I go off to do what I think is another 18 months of my life, get out, start over, reboot. About a month before I'm getting paroled out, the federal government comes in, indicts me, and I'm facing life. And it's for the exact same crime, which people don't think is something that can happen. So not only did I face 30 years once, now I face life. And I spend 2 years in one of the most violent holding facilities in Leavenworth, Kansas, in America. And I think that I'm going to do life. And I go through that for 4 years because of some really cool things and the grace of God. I end up getting a 7-year sentence, and I do a total of 7 years behind bars. I walk out at the age of 35 years old, no college degree, no network, scared to death. I'd never even sent an email. And I go from a $10 an hour employee to a decade later, I'm a vice president inside a $2 billion publicly traded company at the top of my game. So I have a story where I was going to commit suicide. I have a story where I didn't think anything was ever going to be fixable. I have a story where I was as low as you can ever get with drugs. I was shooting 6 to 7 times a day, 50 cc's. And to anybody out there that understands drugs, that's a shit ton of drugs to put into your system. And I go from that to where I'm at today. And I think that inside all of that, there is a story that needs to be told to people out there that are struggling at any level with any substance or any setback that they can possibly think of.
Okay, hold on. I got two things. One, is your life the scene or storyline for Breaking Bad?
No, it's not. But I will tell you this: I know enough about it to let you know that Breaking Bad got it right. Okay.
Two is the prime importance I think you did bring up in the beginning was the fact of, and that whole story was important. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when you said something about it being in your 20s and being addicted, for instance, doing everything you possibly can to make sure you have that next fix. I've been going to the gym every day for 8 years. Okay. I have not missed a day. That is my fix. That is my therapy. That is my addiction. All right. Even look what I'm wearing. I got a job at a gym to continue the
Represent,
habit. And
represent, Robbie.
during COVID, for instance, I built my own home gym. So I was doing everything I possibly can to make sure I never was without it. So I understand from that deep of level, but I think there's something critical that happens in your 20s or around, like I'm 22, for instance, around that early 20s is when you're trying to find your mark. And I think that's because of the expectations society puts on you as a person to get your shit done. Every movie or somebody in their 30s has already got their life set together, has already had these things come together, and everything's selling you about being a better person or being this idolized movie version. And it's not true. There are people that work so hard to get somewhere. And I think a lot of people realize during this pandemic is that they worked their ass off at a company that didn't give two shits about them and dropped them, which is why I get upset, because I've seen so many people that during this situation, I've known 4 people that have killed themselves.
Mm.
It's not fun. My gym, for instance, the one I always went to before I got a job at this one, was I was going there every day 8 years, and they shut down permanently because new owners took over and they couldn't qualify for the package. People's businesses were ruined. People just got really upset. It was like the scene from Wall Street when everyone started jumping off the buildings because all the stocks plummeted and they lost their money. It is a crazy world, and you're not in that much control of it as you think you are with the life that you're living currently, and it's time to grab hold of that. Now, this isn't going to be a motivational thing at all. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying is there is a point in your life where you are trying to figure out what the hell you're going to do. You have overcame that point in your life. You have found and you have made your way. And some people take an early shot at leaving early and not knowing what that, not taking that chance because it's already too hard. They can't see the end of the tunnel. You're talking to people that might not have it figured out and are looking at it like the tunnel or the darkness is never going to end. How do you typically pull them out of that scenario? Because even for me, a guy in his 20s, I don't see much going for me. For instance, I'm kind of at where you were at before you got arrested and everything. I'm more at the point of like, life is kind of a little crappy. And how does that dark tunnel? I can give you motivation. I can give you whatever to pull yourself out of anything. But I'll have a day where I go through the same thing, where I'm not going to be able to focus. I'm not going to be able to be happy. I'm not going to be able to do these things. And I think that's important when you're talking to someone. When you really want to sell something to somebody, you have to sell yourself. It's like I said to you, you have to sell yourself to me. I want to hear in your voice everything you believe or everything you're saying is true, because how many times do we go into public, buy a product, and next thing you know, you don't believe what the person's even selling?
Hmm. Well, again, I'll tell you the good news is, Robbie,
Yeah.
I'm not selling anything, my man. we're having a conversation. So
Exactly.
here's what I would say to you. First of all, the 4 people that have taken their lives makes me really, really sad, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear all of that. Secondly, what I would tell you, and I certainly don't want to come across as, hey, look, I'm a 50-year-old guy, and I was 22 once. But here's what I would say worked for me um, at that period of my life. It's not about motivation per se. It's not about inspiration per se, because those things aren't what lasts. What lasts is a shift in perspective. What lasts is having an awareness of a new way to see life. And what we're talking about essentially is not people that don't have others to lean on or others to talk to. We are talking about people who are stepping into a new phase in their life with very little perspective on what it really means. And in your early, let's just talk about me. In my early 20s, my perspective on life was exponentially different than the way I see it now. And the best thing that ever happened to me was that I was forced to slow down. I was forced to understand weakness. I was forced to be humble. And I had to ask the big questions and sit back and listen, which are, what's it all about? Why did this happen to me? What am I going to do next? And you hit on something that's very, very critical to what's going on now and what happened to me in that cell. I had to realize that control and order and all of these things that we as human beings think we're entitled to are an illusion, right? Because we can die at any point. We can lose people that we love at any point, and we are not in control of that. Life is very fragile. So, what's important is while you're here, what are you grateful for? What do you understand that you're getting that's worth talking about, that's worth wrapping your emotions into? And once you start to answer those questions, growth starts to begin. Forget inspiration, forget motivation, just start changing the way you see life. And at 22 years old for me, I thought it was all about, how do I get to the best job? How do I get to the status? How do I get to a certain amount of money? How do I get to this image that's been built in my head over the last 22 years of where I'm supposed to be? And that's the wrong approach, right? The approach is, what trips my trigger? What makes me happy? What am I really, really good at?
And what are you
What?
being afraid of that's holding you back from what you want? I
That's
took
right.
took me a
But
long time to realize that when I was, I think it was just probably this year or last year, I was like, why the fuck am I caring what anybody thinks about me? Like what is happening? Because like you're walking out in the public afraid to wear sweatpants because someone's gonna judge you. You have to put on, I know ex-girlfriends that put on 10 pounds of makeup before they went to the store in the morning. I'm like, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Who the fuck is putting on all this at 5 o'clock? Who's going to care? Nope. That person you run into in the street isn't going to matter 5 minutes from now. They're not going to, I'm not saying that person doesn't matter, but I'm saying they're not going to be thinking about you 5 minutes from now. And I think that's an important thing. A lot of people don't realize is they spend their whole life afraid to go after something because of how it might negatively impact them, such as appearance or, oh, if I do this and people are going to make fun of me. Who cares? You took a shot. Is that going to matter when you're dead? Like, I mean, you only get what you have and then it's gone.
I think it gets a little more complex than that. But you're right. You're right. 100% right about everything. Who gives a shit, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. And incidentally, it's all the small stuff. That's where we need to get in our minds. But if I'm being honest, even I care. Like, I've been through all of that stuff that we just talked about, and I still care so much about what people think in so many aspects of my life. And I have to check myself all the time. And so, you know, going to the reason everything is Kyle Dean Houston, we talked about that early in the game. Why, do you go by Kyle? Do you go by Kyle Dean Houston? My website, my handles, everything is Kyle Dean Houston, because I promised myself 2.5 years ago that I was no longer going to hide from my past, and I was no longer going to let it have power over me. And if I was going to step out there in a big way and tell my story completely, then I wanted to, you debate, oh, should I be, some nifty little marketing slang, or should I be, no, I'm going to be Kyle Dean Houston. And here's all the ways I fucked up. And here's all the ways I got over it. And the only way to do that strong and come correct and not give two shits about what anybody thinks about is to come completely. So that's what I chose to do. And that's how I'm creating this brand.
The way you're saying that sounds like you have some haters that follow you.
No, I don't have any haters. I'm very lucky.
I've had a
I
few
don't have any
people
haters
that
that comment.
I've
Maybe
had
I do.
I've had a
But
few people that are afraid to use their name or something like that because someone would look up their, and I've had it happen in the past on past episodes, someone that would comment saying, here's his profile to a court case or something. And it turns out I had someone that did a crime in the past on. And I think what you were saying hinted at like, oh, that you have someone that would do that to you. I'm like, but you're being open about your shit.
yeah, well, no, what it was a hint to, and you picked up on it for sure, was that I kept that a secret. And I never told anybody, with the exception of my wife and the people that I grew up with, that my past existed. So everybody that I worked for, everybody that worked for me, I mean, I managed lots and lots and lots of salespeople. Nobody knew. Our best friends did not know anything about my prison time or my drug addiction, and I hid all of that. 2.5 years ago, I realized I need to take back my life. I realized every single decision that I'm making in my life is based on fear, shame, guilt, insecurity, and I'm not living a full life. And at the age of 48 years old, 47 and a half years old, whatever it was, I decided I'm going to take back my life and not only tell a few people, I'm going to tell the stinking world about what I did and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. I have literally at a very late stage jeopardized every single thing that I have built in my life to tell this story. Jeopardized my reputation, jeopardized how people feel about me in Silicon Valley, jeopardized how VCs are going to look at me. And I do it for one reason, because I'm me, and I want to be strong enough to live my, I hate saying this, but live my truth, and make sure that there's nothing lurking in the shadows that can rear its head and prevent me from being who I want to be.
I think it's all about a factor of being genuine too.
No, you can be a genuine person and keep your secrets.
Man, I'm telling you, dude, for talking to somebody, I mean, I talk to people, I mean, I don't even know what episode number this will be, but from all these hundreds of conversations I've had for an hour or something long, you can't do bullshit on me. If you end up bullshitting with me, I end up knowing about it. And I usually either I'll call you out on it or I just won't say it. Mostly I've had probably 50 or 60 something recordings out of all the times I do this where a person just wants to come on here and lie or not be themselves or not give me a true on full on name or something. And it's because you can sense falseness. And I think that's what really sells people or gives people a bad vibe. I feel like too many people want to be all hidden. You know, how is it saying you brag in public and you cry in private? You know,
Mhm.
be honest about your stuff. I'm genuine. I'm real. Everything I've said, it's all real stuff. I don't know. I mean, honestly, some of the stupid stuff I said in the past, I definitely regret, but it's out there. So fuck it. But it's about taking the time to do so, which was the whole point of this, like getting to know each other, getting to figure out why. And I feel like a lot of people that do these businesses are afraid to show themselves. I've given them platforms to do it. It's just conversation. It's the same thing with you. What do you mean? It's just conversation. What's the script? There's no fucking script. Let's just talk.
Robbie, I never asked for a script, my man.
You
I
asked,
just asked
what
for an
was
introduction,
I'll
brother.
pull out the
Hey,
first
hey,
message
Robert,
of this
listen.
thing. Hang on.
Well, let me make my point again. My point is this. My point is you can be a genuine person and not share every single secret out there, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. And people that take the leap to tell their story at the level that I am are insane. They're insane. And it does not come with easy decisions. At the age of 50 years old and starting over with putting something like this out there, which could definitely impede my ability to ever represent a brand again, it doesn't come with any small amounts of thought. It's not an easy thing to do. And I don't think anybody that's listening to this should feel bad because something bad happened in their past and they've chosen to keep it to themselves. What I would say is that anybody out there that has a thing that they're keeping to themselves that affects their lives negatively, tell somebody. Make it something that you don't keep a secret, because secrets fester in a way that we can't even see. So that's my point. You don't have to tell the world. You don't have to do what I'm doing. I'm essentially potentially sacrificing all of the things that I talked about in my life because I feel like it's my purpose. I feel like it makes sense of why I went through what I went through to tell the world about it. And if I can make a small group of people feel safer, get hope, feel better about their lives, or go out and change the world themselves, then it's all worth it. But it's not easy, man. It's not easy. If you jump on my LinkedIn account right now, I don't talk about this because I haven't gotten to that point yet. Does that make sense to you?
LinkedIn doesn't make sense to me, but the rest of it does. I have a LinkedIn, but I don't. So many people are trying to connect with me through. I don't know what it is. I honestly just did it because I thought it was like a for job or something.
Yeah, I understand. It's
But you made up a good point about the leaping thing, about telling somebody, because what happens is it's the same reason why I do have a conversation with someone. You even want to just talk to me in private or something. It's about everyone needs somebody to vent to. You can vent to your pillow, you can vent to something, but if you inside bottling up secrets, afraid to take chances because of a secret, or just letting it eat at you the whole time, it's not a good feeling. I've I'm very good at keeping a lot of my emotions and everything that goes wrong or something, and just dealing with my own. Eventually, at one point, you get to the point where it's like, fuck, I need to talk to someone. You need that friend. That's what I think is more needed in the world, is we rely too much into social media to get everything done for us. You putting up a post bitching about your life, or not, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying a random
yeah,
person out there saying, oh, Starbucks didn't have my Frappuccino. You get 2 likes. You do that every day for a week. Okay, you get 2 likes, one post, 3 likes, 4 likes, 5 likes. And then eventually, once you get to that 6th like, it goes down to 1 like. And you're like, I guess people don't like me anymore. Is that what's going on? And you get this
right.
self-critical thing. And it's because you're relying in false communication and false connection with people. You got that same pat on the back of that like, that Facebook like, that Instagram double tap from a family member or a friend when you came home after a long day and you had someone you could talk to that was genuinely actually hearing you out and listening to you, saying it's going to be okay. Social media makes that a little bit easier to get your problems out there, but not everyone gives a shit. They kind of just look at it, like it, and scroll on down. You need someone to talk to, and that feeling will last a hell of a lot longer. And that's where we're seeing with kids with mental health issues, people with severe depression issues, is getting higher and higher, the numbers every single day, because you're not talking. You're not getting a lot of the shit you need to get done out. And what happens is it goes back to the beginning of being an expert salesman, or even trying to find what you want to do. Your mind is fucking clouded when you're holding all that shit in there. You can't get it out. So once you release some of that, doors open up, pathways open up, the blood vessels in your head open up to the point where you're not feeling like you're going to have an aneurysm. Like it's amazing stuff to see. And that's what I think as people we really need to kind of hone back in on, is the empathy aspect of things, because that'll start sorting out what you want to do, and you realize that person, what he thinks about me doesn't matter. It's what I want. What do I want to do? So they don't end up being at 70 years old looking back at their life and going, damn, I really missed out on some chances.
Yeah, no, I think what you're talking about more than anything is the noise that we've got in our heads. And there's so much of it. There's so much of it that is unnecessary and invented and fabricated, that's kept inside and ends up becoming, in our realities, facts. And if we were to share it and talk and bounce it off of people and not sit inside an echo chamber of the same shit recircling, constantly, then we can get to something that's more real and more useful and get rid of some of that noise. And that's critical. That's important. And how do people do it? Right? People do it by watching others step out and be vulnerable. People do it by facing their fears. People do it by, to your point, not putting so much stock into what social media is telling them is reality. You know what, we could have a very trite conversation about the dangers of social media until we're blue in the face, but everybody's already heard it. I'm guilty of it too. Like social media is a trap, and we find ourselves thinking that it's a necessity, especially when you're building a brand, especially when you're trying to come out and share a message. But you will get lost in two things if you're not careful. The vast sea of all the Me Too's, now that's a poor choice of words, the vast sea of all the copycats. Uh, I hope
The
everybody understands
pandemic,
what I meant.
man, that killed me too. That movement's gone out the window. Nobody cares now.
That's not what I meant. I'm not related to the movement. I meant the copycats, the vast sea of copycats, and the diluting your message to fit at what everybody else wants. Those are two things that you will fall into inevitably, unless you're. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Gandhi. You got to be careful. If you don't watch it, it'll happen. So you're making great points. You're making great points, and conversations are very, very necessary. Very necessary. I would say that honestly, when people make, so you said that the rates of depression and the rates of mental illness are going up and up and up, and it's because of this reason, this reason, and this reason. And I see those stats, and I hear them, and I hear that comment. And certainly we are able to measure people with mental illness. But I challenge those stats all the time because I don't think that the world's problems are getting any worse or any better. I believe that people are people, and I believe that there was probably 25 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the same amount of people with the same amount of problems, but we didn't measure it. We didn't pay attention to it. We didn't talk about it.
It's the
And
idea of social media. That's the whole thing. That's the reason why it's so heavy on us now, is because you can handle your own problems. You can
yeah,
handle people in your family's problems. You can handle some of your friends' problems. When you go on fucking Twitter, you're handling everybody's problems. You're handling the world. You're getting cussed out at a dude in Estonia for something you tweeted. You're getting Facebook messages from random people. We've connected ourselves too much, giving us too much information and too much human thoughts, emotions, feelings, life complications, all these other things at once, to the point where you're overloading your own system to the point you can't even function anymore. Then you become another one of those people that toss the same shit out.
yeah, it's bad. It's bad. There's no doubt about it. But I honestly think that it's just displacing whatever it was back in the 80s and the 90s, whatever it was then before social media. My point is this: we're not creating more mental illness because of it. Uh, certain. We're not creating more schizophrenics. We're not creating more bipolar people. We're not creating something that's clinically um, a clinical prognosis. We're not creating that because of social media. What we're creating is self-esteem issues. What we're creating is this idea that if you don't meet this pinnacle of whatever, then you're a failure. That's
Anxiety,
what
man.
we're creating, and that's the thing that needs to be stopped. And it is both, to your point, both an individual issue and a cultural issue. And fuck it, it's a global issue,
Yeah.
right? Because you're getting cussed out on Twitter by somebody from Bostonia or whatever. And it's not, it's everybody's responsibility to take control of it. I can't stand Twitter for the exact reason, and there's probably lots of people that are on Twitter and love it, but anytime I go on Twitter for what I think is going to be 30 seconds, I end up reading these long chains of complaints, and everybody is just there to argue and complain about their side, and it drives me bananas.
Hey, follow my Twitter, man. I just post jokes. Like, what's a 5-letter word for a disease that ruined our lives? COVID. That's all I post on Twitter.
And how many people are upset about that?
Nobody. Because
Nobody. Good.
I only have like 20 followers.
Oh, really? All right.
There,
Well, you're going to have 21 now, Robbie.
there's
Okay.
you got to follow the podcast though. Can't follow Robbie Robertson because that guy's the guitar player and he's an asshole that owns my Twitter. I don't care. That guy, I don't know what he is.
I can tell you.
He's a guitar player. I know that, but he messed up his bandmates. But he doesn't create music, and he still posts like 40 times a day.
Yeah, but he's created some of the best music in the history of rock and roll. I'm just going to tell you that. Robbie, he was the lead singer to a band called The Band.
I know. Let me tell you something. My parents are radio personalities and
Oh,
also
they are.
DJs at night. And let me tell you something. I still haven't listened to a fucking song by that guy.
Well, I can see where your opinion is a little slanted. I got that. He stole your identity. That son of a bitch. I get
Stole
it.
the name.
Ugh. But he's
But
also an actor.
damn it. This
He,
guy's just doing
yeah,
everything.
but not anymore. He's only tweeting. Hey, but just so you know, he's my second favorite Robbie Robertson. Okay,
Who's your first?
you dude, come on, man. Where you at?
Oh,
Where you at?
shucks. You're my
Keep up
favorite
with me
Kyle
on this
Dean
one.
Houston because you're the only one I know. But Kyle, man, I mean, your story though, it's something out there too. And I mean, I didn't want to come off as disrespectful or anything just because I didn't read into your profile. It was more like I like opening up a surprise, like something on Christmas, and that's kind of like what you were for me. It was like to see your side and see how you wanted to point to things too with the book. Like, what did you even title your book?
Okay, so the book is titled Patchwork Junkie, and it is another one of those situations where I imagine, just imagine, take a leap of faith that 25 years from now, you've worked your ass off to build this career and you've got a certain amount of respect with whatever kind of people I have respect with. And you have to make this decision that you're going to write a book and you're going to make the title say junkie and you're going to associate that with your full name. That was a very, very difficult decision for me. But again, it always goes back to, do I want to take back my life? Do I ever want to be afraid of these things again? And do I want to come correct at every level so that this is going to help people as much as it can? And that's why I chose to put junkie in the name. And I love it now. I love it now. So, Patchwork Junkie, a true story of drugs, prison, and surviving redemption is the full name.
I think more people need to take a certain class that deals with addiction, like I did through high school and through college. I took a lot of chemical dependency counseling and got my certificates for it because honestly, I trust those people more than I trust normal people that weren't addicted to anything, people that want to call themselves a junkie, the people that have gotten over it, people that have gotten to that step because they're the most honest, they're the most brutal, they're done with all the bullshit. It's a lot of things that people don't really realize, you know, and I feel like, yeah, I can see what you're talking about by putting your name on a book that has a title like that, what that would label you as. But it's the same thing as why cover up your scars? Why don't you just let them show? Just let them show. It's something that happened in your life. It's something that turned you into who you are. You can't hide those things. I look at everything that has ever happened in my life. I was severely bullied as a kid, so I picked up the gym. Do I look at bullying as a bad thing? All those moments that it really kind of messed me up. It's definitely left some damage, but at the same time, I wouldn't trade any of those back because it got me into something where when I walk into what I call my iron church, okay, is my gym, grabbing a weight, the stress, everything. This is this car payment, this gas payment, this whatever, all into that, and it's finding an outlet. And I feel like more people need to realize these things that you want to hide, you don't want to put on a resume, you don't want to be open. I walk in, I'll tell my employer what are my flaws. Tell you one thing, I'm a gym addict, body dysmorphic. I got severe depression. What else you want on the table? It's a whole thing because when you're open about that stuff, people don't end up finding out later. They know up front, first of all. And also, they're going to be, first of all, appreciative that you let them know. You're not hiding something for someone to figure out one day when you randomly go, I can't make it in. No, just be open, be yourself, be you, because if they don't like you for that, then you're just going to be at a place that is never going to make you happy and you're not going to feel comfortable to be yourself. I try my best. The way you explain a conversation with me or meeting me is not that I'm a good person and not that I'm a bad person, is that I'm Robbie. You have to take me as I come. And it's just because I can say some shit that'll throw you off your game, but it's all about just forgetting that whole fucking, that thing of, oh, I got everybody watching me. What should I say? No, let's just talk, man. Drop the guards. Let's just have fun and a good conversation because it's all we need.
I would put one small twist to that. Being yourself 100% and sharing every single flaw, there's a time and a place for everything. And if that's the way you choose to live, I think that's fantastic. I really do. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's awesome and inspiring. But I do understand why people don't. I do understand why people don't walk into a, you know, a job interview where they want to manage 500 people on an assembly line and say, hey, um, sometimes I don't come to work because I suffer from severe depression. I just want you to know that. Or, you know, made, I beat my wife. Whatever the secret is they're
Who the
keeping.
fuck's tossing out beating your wife? Holy shit.
I'm just saying, people should not completely show up and tell them, by the way, I do not beat my wife. And
He said, hi, I'd like this job interview. Whoa, whoa no. Hi, welcome to Chipotle. What can I serve for you? I beat my wife. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
no,
I
this is
just
the
want to know
interview.
your food order, bro.
Yeah, no, that's my point. That's my point. There's time and place. Time and place, brother. The thing is that with me, um, try to imagine being so I just raised some money. I got a story, right? This is 3 months ago, and it was for a venture. It doesn't matter. It was another startup company. And in the process of going through the due diligence, the investors, the private equity firm, looked up everything they could find about me on LinkedIn and things like that. I think that at some point, if they look up, if they want somebody to run their sales team and they want somebody to be 100% committed and they want them to represent their brand, not every private equity firm out there is going to accept that I have done 7 years in prison and that I have, 4 felonies and that I have been a meth junkie. So I'm just saying that I would want to tell them eventually, but I wouldn't tell them on my first meeting. I wouldn't tell them right out of the gates, this is what I've done. You guys need to deal with it. I would figure out how we get to a point to where they know that.
It's definitely not
And
an
that's
icebreaker. It's definitely something that
it's the icebreaker. You're killing
it's
me,
not
man.
it's not the icebreaker.
Oh, I thought you said it was the
No,
icebreaker.
you definitely have to let it in. But I think what
But for
is
you, it is. For you,
well,
it is.
yeah, I mean, I just let them know, like, it's never like I'm not going to make it into work because I have this. It's more like I do have these things that are going on. These are my bad things about me, but I've been working very hard to keep that consistent just in advance that you know. I look at also how in a resume, what's really interesting is the type of hiring situations we put her in. Are you going to hire someone who's more qualified or someone that would enjoy it more? I can guarantee you're going to hire somebody based, at least for me, if somebody comes in with a resume saying, oh, you went to Harvard and you got all this background information on this. Yeah. So you're going to hire me or what? Let me get to my next guy first. Then I get to the next guy. I don't have any experience at all. I've never dealt with this at all before, but I'm really passionate about it because I just love doing it so much. You're fucking hired. You know
Yeah,
why? Because I know you're going to be the one that goes home and starts studying on it while the other guy's going home just drinking or doing something else because he's already got it figured out.
that's right. That's right. And now you're bringing up a really, really great point, because what you're talking about is your past issues or the issues that you deal with being a strength instead of a weakness, right? Like, hey, here's my thing. What you see is what you get. You're always going to have honesty. You're always going to have authenticity. You're always going to have me show up on time, and there's not going to be any bullshit or any noise, right? So that's a critical time to talk about your flaws and to talk about your hangups or something like that. So I agree with you 100%. And I've hired enough people. I don't care about their pedigree. I actually sometimes, when I would see that people had their MBA from Stanford or whatever it was, and they want to come in and they want to answer the phones, I tell myself immediately, there's zero chance this person's going to want to do this job. There's zero chance I'm going to have their mind share every day to where they excel. So a lot of times I want to see, tell me more about yourself and tell me why this is interesting and why you're going to wrap your heart into what we're doing. And you're not going to get that from pedigree. You're going to get that from the person that sits in front of you and talks about some of their hangups. And I agree with that 100%. And to your point earlier, if the person that's hiring you doesn't care about how passionate you're going to be about the job over and beyond your pedigree, you don't want to work for them anyway, because then they don't care about you. They don't care about the position. They don't care about your future. And you're already stepping into a world where you're a number. And who wants that? So I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
I definitely think it's a tricky place, and it's even having this conversation and somebody listening to this. It's not like we know all the answers or we do this, but it's more of the factor of you get insight from somebody else's life, someone like yourself that has information to offer. Places that have been in scenarios where kids are going to be listening, trying to figure out what's going on. Maybe they're in a rough spot. I have so many kids, friends of mine that are my age that are going through major addiction problems. I've just got out of juvie or got out, not juvie. I just got out of prison for being in juvie all these years. I mean, they missed out on most of their high school. Um, One of my best friends, for instance, we stopped talking back when I was a freshman, just got out of prison. He's been in since freshman year, which is almost 9 years ago.
Mm.
So it's hard for him to try and figure out what the hell is going on in life right now because he's got to catch up and everything, and he's very lost. But I've been talking to him, reconnecting with him. Eventually going to be on the podcast, hopefully. But it's more of there are people like him that were in that scenario that you were in at one point, trying to figure out what the hell to do, and then they hear your voice or they hear you talk about this thing and then find that moment of clarity. The same reason why someone that might be in their 20s listening to me talk might hear some clarity out of it. I don't have it myself, but I think people like this and people that are writing books like you do, especially you, for instance, Kyle, I think it's important that you're doing this type of thing only because you're showing people that you don't have to be born special. You can have some mess ups and you can get somewhere. And I think that is the main thing that needs to be the message here, especially for people out there listening. Because how many times do you come across someone that just is like, oh, it's not in the cards for me? Okay, well, how
Mm.
do you know if you never take that card?
That's right. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. That's the tragedy, not just for that person, but the tragedy for everybody, because they could pick that card up, they could believe in themselves, and they could do something that changes the world. They could find out something about themselves that literally changes thousands, millions, billions of people's lives because they did not cop out and say it's just not in the cards for me. That is the biggest bunch of bullshit. And in this house, I've got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, both of them girls, my wife and me, and a dog. But nobody says it's not in the cards. Nobody says I can't. And they just don't get to because they live with me, right? And it's really important. I want to say one other thing about your friend that has been locked away since he was a freshman. What I want everybody to know that has scars and tragedies and missteps and just complete fuck ups in their life, but have come back, they have the competitive advantage. And this is what people overlook. I certainly would have been successful if I wouldn't have become a drug addict, if I wouldn't have become, a convict. I would have found a way to be successful because it's just in my DNA. It's something that's important to me. But I would not be this successful. I would not be the person that I am, and I would not have achieved the things that I was able to achieve in a very short period of time had I not been driven by my past. And I will promise everybody out there that is wrestling with their mistakes, you are now teed up because you have a little chip on your shoulder. You are teed up because you have some negative emotions driving you to have the competitive advantage over the trust fund kids that are out there that have done everything right. And once you start to shift the way you view your future to say, hey, I'm actually more teed up to be successful than those people, then nothing's going to stop you. And that's the mindset that I adopted that got me through all this. So I would go so far as to say, it's not, hey, you made it through it. Now let's see what you can do. It's, hey, you made it through it. You don't have an excuse not to be successful now, right? Because your character is built based on how you manage your mistakes, not how you avoid, period. Okay? That's what I've got to tell you. To your point, the people that were drug addicts, the people that are, recovering junkies or whatever it is, you trust them more because the bullshit's out of the way. And that same concept, that same philosophy belongs to every mistake that's been made. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what I call the perfect title to your book, Patchwork Junkie. Because you're patching up the problems. I don't know how to go deep from there, but I think it
You know,
was
it's,
I think it was perfect, dude, because I mean, honestly, with how deep and motivational this thing kind of gets at points, it's still important to know that like you're talking to me, like I said, it's the authenticity. I found it. You know what I mean? That's all I was looking for. Um, and I feel like that's what's important, especially when you're trying to really sense out some things with people. I mean, life is it's not not every question is answered, and honestly we're not in control of our own lives as much as we like to think. Especially we all noticed after the pandemic when everything shut down, we started to realize that we didn't have as much power, and I think it was a time for us to inner reflect, taking hold of it. People are going to need tool books. People are going to need a how-to book on how to control their own life and find out what they want to do. And I think that's exactly what yours is going to show, with a story in a way, like you were saying before, that is going to be different than the others.
it's going to be different. And it's a memoir, by the way. It's not a how-to or a self-help book. It's a memoir.
It's a
And
memoir.
it doesn't pull any punches at all.
No stops.
Look, if you like the F word, it's jam-packed full of it.
I
If you
fucking
like
do.
if you like prison, cop chases, fights with 300-pound murderers, if you like existential, the thought process of all of that stuff, look, I'm going to tell you, you're going to read this book. I know you don't read books. I heard you loud and clear. You're going to read this. If you read the first 2 chapters, this is to you, not to your audience. If you read the first 2 chapters, you're going to read the rest of the book.
The same thing Brant Tobler said to me, and he sent me his book. I read like 15 chapters in. That was the only book I really read. That one, and there was a mental health book I read that was pretty interesting. I do have a bookshelf in my studio, though, under that blanket. I don't use any of them. They're just for
And
show.
and you saw the cover of the book. It's a beauty. So come on, man.
All right. Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your content, man? Tell everybody where they can find the book, and even find your profile to reach out to you if they need to.
Yeah, it's really easy. You can go to patchworkjunkie.com to find the book. It's available right now for pre-order because it launches on August 7th, which we're super excited about. But right now we've been a best-selling new release on Amazon, and things are going well. So patchworkjunkie.com or KyleDeanHouston.com. That's my website. And then every other handle for Facebook, Instagram, whatever is Kyle Dean Houston. So I made it really easy for people to find me.
Just Google it, people.